You're watching Crime Watch on ENCA. Hope you had a good Christmas. The police cannot fight crime alone. Activists have a pivotal role to play, and partnerships are important. But how do community members get involved? What role can they play? We are seeing more and more ordinary citizens standing up and leading the fight against crime in their communities. We are joined by Dr Reza Patel and from Cape Town, Lynn Phillips. Good evening to you, Dr Patel, and welcome.
Good evening.
Your view on communities getting involved. You're an activist, you play a leading role. What do communities do?
They're meant to get organized. What they do is they do get together and then they become disorganized after a little while. So it requires people who have the ability to organize individuals or entities to get involved as well. So when that happens, you have a very strong, sound structure that then develops. They enter into relationships with organizations like your community police forums, your neighborhood watches, your groupings that fight crime. And that's what they do. They take up, in inverted commas, arms, which is not actually the right word, but that is what they do.
So on a practical level, explain to us, what are you doing in your community and how are you mobilizing to fight crime?
There are various hats that I wear, Yusuf, and if you're saying to me that I should talk about CCIN, I can do that very happily. What we did some years ago is we became a bit frustrated with the inability to create synergies without having to walk a red tape. And with that, what we did was we established an entity which would allow for us to get organized between different individuals. So we began bridging the gap between entities that exist. And you'll find that criminals don't have to necessarily fight a direct onslaught with a partner. What they do is they walk between the differences of partners. An example of this is you'll find that the Metro Police and the SAPS and the various law enforcers have their different mandates. And when they operate, there are huge gaps that exist. And these criminals walk right through those gaps. They don't have to confront the police partnerships or the authorities. And this is what we've bridged. We brought them together, and we brought all the other crime-fighting groups together. And that is technically the biggest part of what CCIN has done, is bring in synergies, partnerships, and create a methodology and a synergy that people will actually physically hold on to. And this is what's been happening over the past few years, and we've developed from a little grouping to a very large grouping.
Well, we have in Cape Town Lynn Phillips, the secretary of the Mitchell's Plain Community Police Forum, an activist I know for many, many years. Lynn, the role of communities. On the Cape Flats, you're finding more and more people getting involved in the fight against crime, more so now because of the gang warfare, Lynn.
We have a lot of people getting involved in the community fight, the fight against crime. We all call them safety volunteers within Mitchell's Plain and on the Cape Flats. What we are doing in Mitchell's Plain specifically in the fight against crime, we have established street and block committees. And the reason for that is that we believe that communities need to take ownership of their communities where they live in.
And do you find the police are cooperating? Are you working well with police?
Yes, we have a strong partnership in Mitchell's Plain with our police station. We can safely say that when we identify issues within our precinct, they really deal with the issues effectively.
Well, let's talk very quickly, Lynn, about the gang warfare. We know the Cape Flats has been a center of attraction. The Minister of Police set up a special anti-gang unit, controversial to some extent, but now talk of it possibly going national. Is that particular unit effective?
I can safely speak for Mitchell's Plain. We have seen the successes in Mitchell's Plain with the launch of the anti-gang unit in Mitchell's Plain and the Operation Thunder. We have also picked up within Mitchell's Plain, because the gang violence was very high in Mitchell's Plain, there is a reduction in crime, particularly serious and violent crimes in Mitchell's Plain.
Well, Doctor, let's talk about the role of community police forums. You're also a member of the CPF.
Yes.
Are CPFs effective?
Yes, they are. The problem that you faced with, Yusuf, is the effectiveness of policing or community policing doesn't have a benchmark standard. So there's no written booklet which allows a community police forum to be able to gauge itself against what it's actually meant to do. So any sort of success that you talk about is then gauged on the actual practical success that one would actually see. The concept of community policing is a fantastic idea. The problem is that there's been a lot of change, there's been a lot of influence, negative influence. People have lost interest, they've lost want to be involved. And what's happened is the new concepts and ideas and innovations haven't been an attraction to a CPF entity. Instead, what's happened is individuals have started seeing opportunities to create employment for themselves or income streams, etc., instead of bringing it into the family.
No, that's the problem. Is that your experience in the Western Cape as well, Lynn, that CPFs have become almost personalized, it's all about themselves and not the community?
In some instances, I would agree to that, but I can safely say in Mitchell's Plain, we are not office-bound CPF executive members. When an incident happened in a particular street, and we're not boardroom CPFs as well, we would move directly to where the incident has happened, where we urge the community to come forward and join the structures. And that we have seen has become very effective in our communities.
You spoke earlier, Lynn, about street committees, block committees. You have neighborhood watch groups. I know your particular community, you're very active. You'll go out for prayer meetings. Is the community losing faith in the structures, or is the community getting involved?
I can safely say, Yusuf, that the issue that we have in Mitchell's Plain is the politics that is being played. What is happening, that politicians are playing the structures up against each other, and that creates the animosity where people feel that we don't want to be part. We had just spoken to the newly elected MEC for community safety, where we said that politicians must please stay out of civilian structures where we can deal with our own issues, because we have an understanding of how to deal with the issues as a community. And because of this political interference, it actually creates more and more tiredness, and people then feel that, no, we don't want to fight, we rather sit back.
That's a problem, Dr. Patel, politicians getting involved in community policing or community activism. But let's cut to a practical level. So I'm an ordinary member of the community. I'm not a member of the CPF. I want to help and fight crime. What do I do?
This is it. One needs to realize that a CPF structure needs to attract every conceivable level of community. So it doesn't just necessarily necessitate a person who's prepared to do patrolling, for example, or someone who's prepared to do a bit of intelligence gathering, etc. What we need are ordinary people who are prepared to do data typing, who are prepared to answer a phone, who are prepared to get involved from an IT perspective, who are prepared to get involved from an organizational perspective. And the attraction for the people is an absolute zero in terms of any sort of financial reward, etc. But the reward on the table for them is that their communities are going to be safer. So yes, communities must get involved. There's a huge attraction for them to make their areas safer. Making your areas safer increases the ability for you to be able to be flexible. You don't need to be as vigilant and cautious as you were before. Children can start playing on streets. Your property values start increasing. I don't have to go into all of that.
I want to pick up on that if we have time. Lynn, are you finding more and more members of the community getting involved, becoming active citizens, and blowing the whistle on crime? Because very often, and very sadly, people protect criminals. It might be a family member, it might be a neighbor, it might be a colleague. Are people starting to change their mindset?
I think from our perspective, yes, the mindset has been changed in Mitchell's Plain specifically. And the real purpose for the street committees, Yusuf, if I can say, that we said we're looking at the developmental agenda for street committees. Within that street, there is people with various skills. And if we look at the Cape Flats specifically, 60% of our young people are on substances. Now, if we want to steer our young children in the right direction, we need to do something that is going to be effective for them. So what we are doing in Mitchell's Plain, specifically in our street, in our block committees, is they need to look at programs and opportunities for those young people, and then guide them in the direction that they can, that the young people can accept and look at the opportunities and make use of those opportunities that is there. And that is what the CPF in Mitchell's Plain are doing. We are not just looking at fighting crime, but we are looking at the social issues within Mitchell's Plain and how best do we address that collectively with SAPs in Mitchell's Plain. And that makes us more effective within our community.
Dr. Patel, very quickly, the role of young people,
Yes.
very, very important.
Vital, pivotal.
And how do they get involved?
Well, this is it. They're not prepared to get involved. They're not willing to. There isn't a high enough attraction for them. The platforms that are established, the various measures that are put into place doesn't excite them enough. They would rather into a negative direction. So if you look at them, we need them involved from all of the perspectives that surround them. The entertainment that keeps them busy, the social media that keeps them going, the physical environments that they operate in, those are areas that we actually have, and that's areas that we need to work on that will attract them. At the moment, if you find the percentage of the youth that are getting involved in CPF, they're dwindling dramatically, and you're finding that the burden is on the older people or the parents or the elders that are there. So how to get involved? Young people, please just look at your local CPF. Get involved in every conceivable way that you have to add value. In other words, if you know how to sew, then go in there and say, I'd like to sew you a shirt for your CPF. If you can,
and get involved.
Yeah, get involved. That's the way to do it.
Well, that was Dr. Reza Patel and Lynn Phillips, anti-crime activists and community members doing great work in their communities. Well, have you found your community police forum useful? Have your say using the hashtag CrimeWatch.